How's it going, folks? This is Chris, and welcome to my podcast. Today is our first podcast for GSTalks, and I'm going to be sitting down with my buddy Scott Achord, who's a director on the channel Monster Productions 27. He makes short films, along with me being as an actor, sometimes producer, sometimes just whatever he needs to be. And we're going to talk about short films as the main topic, and is there a market and kind of an audience for short films. So stick around for that. I also asked him what his favorite film was that he did, what draws his inspiration, who he inspired from filmmaking-wise, what it takes to make a short film, and how you should go about doing it, do's and don'ts, that kind of thing. So we're about to go into that, so enjoy and have a good time. What is up, people of the internet? My name is Chris, and this is our new podcast called GSTalks. And I want to welcome our guest at this time. His name is Scott Achord, one of my best friends. Scott, say hello.
Oh, you're so nice. Yep, I'm Scott Achord. I do short films online. I also do reviews at MP27 Reviews. But Chris and I mostly collaborate together on short films. It's a lot of fun.
And that's going to be today's topic, actually, is short films. And we're going to get into that in a few seconds here. But in case you didn't know, again, plugging Scott's stuff as well. He and I do short films. And when I say he and I mean mostly him. You said it right there. And I mostly act and make management and that kind of stuff. By management, I mean like manage props and provide money and all that good stuff. But name some of the projects that we've done, Scott.
Well, of course, our claim to fame is our Holmes University Wow, I flubbed up my line there. My claim to fame is actually a Holmes University series. It's based off Sherlock Holmes. We took the concept of Sherlock Holmes, put it in college. They're on campus together. They're dorm mates. They're solving crimes. It's the most dangerous college campus you've ever been a part of. But we've also done just little things like we did for a Totino's competition. Chris wasn't involved in that one, unfortunately. We tried a mini-series. We've tried to get a season 2 off the ground for years, but it's called The Fifth Dimension. We shot it in the same town that they filmed Twin Peaks, and we mostly just do a lot of stuff like that. Old friend for film school. But I think our most successful thing we've done, obviously, is the Holmes University series.
And with that, before we actually dive into the questions, well, I guess the notes I took don't really make any sense, but with the questions that I have, let's start with who do you look up to as far as directing goes?
Well, some of my biggest inspirations as a filmmaker, of course, my biggest inspiration is Alfred Hitchcock. One of my biggest captivations as a kid was Alfred Hitchcock's Psycho. As just overall the visual vernacular, everything they had to do. And they weren't actually praised at the time when that film came out. And that's one of those things that I always stand by your opinion, because eventually it may change for the better or for the worse. And so Alfred Hitchcock, of course, one of the biggest ones also is J.J. Abrams more recently. Especially because of him producing things like Cloverfield, which is one of my biggest inspirations, which is how we originally came up with the title Monster Productions, although that might be changing here in the near future.
Now, moving on, before I wanted to ask so many questions there, but I'm not going to. So let's actually get down into the topic itself. As we said, we make short films. Now, define a short film.
A short film, if you want to go by the technical standards, it's roughly under 50 minutes in length, and it tells a narrative at a faster pace than a feature film would or a TV show would, where you essentially want to tell what could be a feature film narrative in under an hour. But there's also you can tell a more intimate, almost like a scene, and classify that as a short film. And that's where I differ, and I think that is more along the lines of something that would be like a video, where you get this funny little short of like an SNL skit, where it's a video, it's not necessarily a short film. But a short film should be more like a narrative told in the less span.
And we've tackled skits as well as short films, as well as just scenes, really. And my question is that well, I guess I have it right down here. What does it take to make a short film?
It takes essentially the same thing that you would get from a feature film, just on a smaller scale. But the beauty of a short film is anybody can make a short film. I mean, anyone can make a feature film as well. But with a short film, you can take a small concept and just try and tell a story of it. Get your friends together, get a camera, make it. And a short film is a lot more feasible for people who are newer into the industry, and also just as a exercise in general.
What would you say the hardest thing is to make a short film? Like, would you say it's probably, getting a cast? Is it finding the time to actually do it? Because people who usually make short films aren't usually hired to do that. They usually do it on their free time. So yeah, what do you think?
Yeah, getting the cast together is a huge deal. Other than that, it's having to check your brain at the door and trying to make sure you're not trying to imitate someone else entirely. So I don't want to go in, even though I love J.J. Abrams, I don't want to go in and make a J.J. Abrams film. I need to make a Scott Achord film. And getting that all together, but also figuring out your production scale, because naturally you don't have the cinema quality that you would normally have, so you have to be able to try and make it look compelling without having it be something like an IMAX production, of course.
Right. Just off the top, are there any that aren't yours short films that stand out in your mind?
Yeah, actually, that's why I love the website Vimeo. I'm not there every day, but I do like to check it out. And at Vimeo, like there's filmmakers like Sandro who did the short film Joyride, or a popular one that you'll see people circulate around is Tune for Two by Alpha Primo. And that one is also, that's more like a skit, but it's still hilarious. But also Justin Cullima, who's a good friend of mine. He did a web series called The Gories for a little while, and that was going around for some award circuits. And he's a good friend. And I love watching that kind of stuff because you do get a sense of this community, because you do kind of inadvertently become a part of a community the moment you start doing short films.
And speaking of that community, actually, this brings me to my next question, and this is a good one. We're gonna spend time on this one. Is there a market/audience for short films these days? Because I know that we're in a quote unquote digital age where anything can go up online, and people sometimes just pass it and then skip to the next thing. People are usually into the viral stuff. I hate using that word, but viral. Whether it be some sort of SNL skit or something that some kid just did that threw up that got people's attention, and they skim over those short stories or short films per se. Is there an audience?
Yes, there is an audience. That's one of those things that you really have to be particular with. That it's hard because there are people who do skim over it, and you see the stuff that you pour days and months, and in some cases years into.
Because we basically do this for free, honestly, until very, 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 very recently,
Oh,
and
yeah.
like
We're cheap as hell.
we're cheap. We, as you would say back in the day, we did this for basically a ham sandwich.
Yep, a ham sandwich, and sometimes there was cheese on that ham sandwich.
But because I remember the really early days of us doing stuff. Like, I'm gonna reference our earlier stuff, whether it not going past the dream, obviously.
Yeah.
Those of you who don't know, we did a film back in sixth grade,
I think seventh grade.
in a
It
private
was
school.
horrible.
It was horrible, but it was funny, and we weren't trying to be funny, although we were kind of were at the same time. That doesn't count. Like, our first independent stuff that you ever did was a little project called Demodon. Now, tell me about Demodon.
Oh, Jesus Christ. Demodon was me saying I can take like the old movies like Godzilla or the newer movies like Cloverfield and Pacific Rim. I can do that. And I didn't know what I was doing.
And how old were you at the time?
We started the film production when we were probably 14, and we finished at maybe 17, between maybe 18.
So yeah, if you do the math, that's a long time. That's roughly, I can't do math in my head. 5 years basically. I'm butchering that, but whatever. Don't judge me.
That was principal photography.
That
That
was
wasn't even
principal.
editing.
Yeah, yeah. And like that film, I love that film. How long does it run?
It runs at about 48 minutes, so it's like 2 minutes under feature length, technically.
Dang, because I think we were actually pushing for a feature length film right there, weren't we?
The script, we had an estimated runtime of approximately like 78 minutes, but we actually did cut a lot out. I still to this day have scenes. We cut roughly 15 minutes out of Demodon.
Will there be a director's cut?
No.
Because it took so long, right?
No, because we recycled the same actors because we didn't have enough people
But
to
that
cast.
was the limitations we had as kids making a feature length film.
Yeah, but editing it, looking at it, going, "Oh my God, this was just me in a coat or me in a jacket."
By the way, pro tip from Chris, or if you want to call it that, sometimes you don't have enough to make or to have actors to fill out extras. So you always use your existing actors as extras. This has been pro tips with Chris.
Yeah, we actually use that to this day. And that's amazingly useful. And it's used even in Hollywood movies today. Cloverfield, for example, in the trailer, there's a line where you hear someone say, "I saw it, it's alive, it's huge." That was actually ADR done by the director last minute because they said, well, we feel like something needs to cue the audience to something's out of the ordinary.
Even though we've always been self-aware of how we disguise ourselves, and we obviously sometimes you could tell we're not so good at it as our earlier stuff, but we've gotten really good in the future of disguising ourselves. So you can't tell that if it's like some random person just walking down the street, it's not going to be visible enough for us that it's one of the main actors.
The amount of camera tricks used in short films, too, is amazing because that's something that we really have to do. And I love that, is the idea of camera tricks. So if any of you are out there who listen to this, who decide they want to do a short film, get experimental with camera tricks. This isn't something that's going to be released in theaters. I mean, yeah, it's going to be released worldwide on the internet or something like that. But get clever with the camera tricks because you can figure out something that works and say, wow, I didn't even think that was going to work. I didn't think showing the actor's shoulder would be enough. And it does.
And I think we learned that kind of within these last couple of years, honestly, when we started doing more serious stuff, kind of like towards the end of the Four Chronicles series that we did, and then intro to Holmes University, we've kind of picked up a lot along the way. And I keep saying we. It's mostly Scott, but
It's we. It's definitely a collaboration.
it's a collaboration. But I'm not gonna take all the credit, obviously, because I've only maybe handled the camera a handful of times. But with that said, I've learned from Scott, obviously, on how to handle the camera, how to make sure everything's framed up right, how to focus.
You got film school for free.
I got film for so, and that actually brings me to my next question that I actually didn't write down, but this is a good question for the people looking to get into not just short films, but even film as a career, whether it be commercial, whether it be TV, feature. Is it worth it to go to film school?
No, and I'm gonna tell you why. Because I went to film school and I learned some camera tricks, but I forgot some things that were my own signature, perhaps, because I was told it was against the grain. It wasn't what you were supposed to do. And a lot of film schools teach you a lot of bias with the teacher. So they're like, oh, no, you're going to do news broadcast. You're going to do documentary. And a lot of people don't want to do those. Granted, I've done both news broadcast and documentary ever since. But I do my own narratives, but I forgot some of those things that made our work ours. And Chris and I once had a discussion one night that it was like, I feel like sometimes we forgot some of the stuff that we did before. And it's true, because film school teaches you these things and tell you you cannot ever do, etc. But the best advice I got was I took the intro classes, and I went through film school, and the intro classes are the most useful thing you'll learn. And then after that, watch documentaries behind the scenes, making ofs. The making of the Alien movies is one of the most in detail. Each documentary is 4 hours long. And if you really want to learn how to make a movie, you watch those. You watch the making of Lord of the Rings, those kinds of things. So then you pick up your own, but you still possess those basic qualities.
For the record, I did not go to film school. I was going to, and Scott actually talked me out of it at the time after he left film school. And I was kind of bummed about that, but I understood, and then we continued to make our short films. Now, like you said, basically anyone who wants to make a film doesn't need to go to film school. And with that said, where should a person looking to break into the film industry? Not necessarily the film industry, but like make a film. They've never made a film before. They've never gone to film school. They never looked so much as a tutorial of like how to do it. They just have a camera and they want to make a film. Kind of like us at a very early age. What would you recommend? Like what are the starting points? Like, do you start? Well, first, what's the starting point?
Watch movies and figure out what you love about movies and take that and run with it.
For you, it was Cloverfield.
For me, it was Cloverfield. There are some people who don't like Cloverfield, and I understand why, because I've watched enough movies to understand why someone wouldn't like the movie, but it resonated with me. So you watch what you love, and then you say, this is why I love it. And you try and build upon that. So I don't want you to necessarily go to film school because you want to make a film. If you want to make a film, go out and make it. Just do it. Figure out what works for you, what you love to watch, what makes you say, I like that image on the screen. Do that. If you have to, replicate a scene. I don't ever recommend fully replicating a scene, but do it. Just see and make your story, because your story is important to you.
Now you say make your story, and this is actually, I want to apply this to the question further on. As far as making a story, let's say for the person first starting out, should they try to create their own story? Because that could be very, overwhelming sometimes for newer people. But like, should they start with their original stories, or should they start with a fan film? Should they start with skits? Should they start with something low key, or something they just do with their friends on the side? Like, what do you recommend as far as, aside from creating their own stories? Like, what kind of story they should start with? Like something that they don't, take too much and they get overwhelmed.
Do whatever story comes to you first. If it's a fan film, great. I've made fan films. It was called Hunger Games Survival because I wanted to make a Hunger Games movie because I just read the books. That was before the movies, by the way. And I read the Hunger Games books. I said, I got to do this. And I went and made it. It's over 10,000 views now.
One of our highest, unfortunately, viewed stuff.
Yeah, it's viewed. And I loved it. It was fun. But if, let's say, an original story, like how Demodon was one of the first things that resonated with me. If it's an original story that resonates with you first, by all means, make it. If a fan film comes first, make it.
Now, obviously, fan films will probably get more views because people, sometimes just search, blah, 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 Hunger Games fan film. Now, it's harder, especially for us, because we're mostly original these days, mostly. Can it be undergrading to, like, just not get views right away?
Oh, yeah, of course. I've had a lot of long nights where I'm depressed as hell. I mean, it happens.
And I'm talking mostly, like, obviously, I think the quick outlet is YouTube. Most these days anyways, so that's what I'm talking about when I say views.
Yeah, absolutely. It can be depressing when you look and see that Freddie W., which Chris and I differ on this. I hate Freddie W.
Now, see, I like early Freddie W. I've changed. I've kind of I don't need to explain myself. I'm very action oriented, so anytime there's an action scene, I'm always right there and ready to do it, and then I kind of, without hesitation, take over the set of how I want the action scene to go. Even though Scott is very action oriented, he's probably more action oriented and knows how to film an action scene way more than I do. But I'm always wanting to do that because of Freddie W. Like, I learned how to do After Effects because of Freddie W. Like flares, that was a pain to do until we figured out Freddie W.
I will give him credit where credit's due. The muzzle flares was an amazingly helpful tutorial when he did that. I don't like him as a filmmaker. And I could break it down forever, but I won't. But
we thank you for that.
Yeah, I'm not a fan of Freddie W. Chris is, and so it's depressing when you work on this beautiful art piece that is like half an hour long personal story to
And you
you.
might have spent months on that, your heart,
Oh,
your
easily.
blood, sweat, tears, and then let's say it gets like 15 views.
Yeah, and
It's hard to break into the market.
it really is hard. And then you see Freddie W. get like 5 million views in an hour, and it's hard. And
But you have to understand the time that Freddie W came out, nothing up to that point was done that he was doing.
yeah, that's one of those things that you always have to realize. It's never going to be easy. If
There-
it is, congratulations.
Exactly. Back then, there was one Freddie W with Corridor Digital and all those guys. Now there's a million Freddie W's, and I like us because we focus on stories. We tell short stories. We're one of the maybe many few channels that actually tell stories. That's why it's hard for us to break into the market. Which brings me back along. Like, is there an audience slash, marketing for
There
short
is.
films?
They just don't know where their viewership is yet. If that makes sense, they're there and they're looking, but it's harder to find short film pieces because a lot of times when you click on a video, you don't know what you're going to get, and that's where it makes it a challenge. But the audience is there by all means, and
They just have to find it.
they're great. I've had people message us about our Holmes University series saying like, "Hey, I was on Netflix. We ran out of Sherlock stuff to watch and we went on the internet. We found you guys and we love it. We watched all of them. We're speculating and they emailed me like speculations that they had. It was one of the most flattering things I've ever encountered."
I want to share this story because it matters a lot to me, and I tell Scott the story. I work I'm a cashier. I'm not a full-time actor, unfortunately, or producer, or YouTuber, or anything like that. I have a job. I have a life. I do this as a hobby, and I want to break into more into that. Like, I want to start doing this as a career. But the story. What are you doing over there? Oh. Well, we just found out. Scott, break the news.
So Chris had his Facebook up at the same time we were recording this, and I just saw on trending that Kimbo Slice just died at age 42. That's weird. I don't know how to react other than Kimbo Slice died.
For those of you who don't know, Kimbo Slice was an MMA fighter. Before that, I think he was a YouTube sensation. Or into a YouTube sensation after he became an MMA fighter. One of the two.
Yeah.
He
Speaking of,
I'm not sure if he ever won any heavyweight titles. I'm sure he did. I
he
don't
became known though because of his name.
became
too.
of his name. Yeah, Kimbo Slice, right? He died. Does it say what he died of?
Doesn't I didn't see any details. I just felt like pointing it out. But
It
anyways,
says an undisclosed reason, so we don't know yet.
let's get back to what we were talking
Yes,
about.
we send our condolences to his family. Thoughts and prayers. Rest in peace, Kimbo Slice, dead at the age of 42. You heard it here first, folks.
Yeah, you hopefully heard it here first.
Probably not. This podcast has to come out sometime later. Rest in peace, Kimbo Slice. What was I saying? Oh, I want to share a story. Segues, right? I told Scott this story. It means a lot to me. A couple of weeks ago, actually, might have been a few months by now. I was, like I said, I work at a job. I'm a cashier at a place. I'm not going to name where because reasons. I got noticed for one of my characters that I play on Scott's production.
You can say it's Holmes University.
Yes, it's Holmes University, and for those of you who don't know, Holmes University, I play the character of John Watson. Now, you can think about that. You can imagine that. I will not grow a mustache, and I hope that stays with it, but we'll see.
I really want him to grow the mustache.
Well, we're in college, so I don't think mustaches are very, well, these days they are. It's very hipsterish now, and that's very John Watson probably in the world we've created.
Yeah, I mean, I love the concept that we created with it's Holmes and Watson in college, and they're doing this on like a college level.
We'll get into that in a little bit later, but as of right now, I want the story. I got noticed as the character playing John Watson, and it was this 13-year-old boy. I forgot his name. I think it was Travis. It might have been Trevor. I don't remember. Sorry if you're listening to this. I don't remember. I'll text you tomorrow. Listen. he just like walked up to me. He's like, "Hey, you're John Watson." I was like, "Excuse me," because I couldn't believe it. Like it took.
Well, yeah, it's something that you don't get every day, especially if you're not like Steven Spielberg or something like that.
Exactly, and it was so awe-inspiring.
Yeah.
It was cool. I felt well. I've been famous before, but we'll get into that again
Later.
later on. Um, Gosh, it felt good as my dog just knocked the chair almost over. Relax, boy. You're fine. You're fine. Lay down. For those of you who don't know, just in my room doing this podcast, so disclosure. And
Production value.
production value. It only can go up from here, right? Only go up. So I just want to share that story because it meant a lot to me, and it felt very cool that as someone who never expected to be noticed, really, because again, we don't average that many views. It skyrockets and then goes down. I think it's a safe assumption we pretty much average anywhere from 250 to like the upper 300s, right?
Yeah, I mean it depends on the short film, but our home series averages at somewhere around 200, 250 views. But it's gotten in the eyes of the right people. The actor T.J. Miller, for example, has watched it and loves it. It's one of those things that the right people see it. I too have been identified for it.
Go ahead,
I
share your story.
I was with my girlfriend, so I have a witness to verify this actually happened. And we were it was like, God, I don't know, 7 o'clock in the morning. And we went through a McDonald's drive through ordering coffee and McGriddles, the usual. And this guy looks over and does a double take after we're like about to get our food and stuff, waiting at that window. And he leans through the window and he's not serving our food or anything. He just leans through the window and he's like, "You make the Holmes movie." And I was like, "Yeah, I'm that guy." Because I play in my Holmes series, I play the master blackmailer. So I still had my master blackmailer haircut and everything. And he was like, "Yeah, you do that." And then I said, "Yeah, and I also make it." He's like, "Yeah, I know, because I saw the credits. You direct the Holmes movies." And I was like, "Yeah, that's great." And at the time, we'd just been in a recasting of the main role of Sherlock Holmes, and he was like, "When's that next one gonna come out, man? I love what you did. That's so awesome." My girlfriend was on cloud nine because she thought her boyfriend's obscure ass short film no one would know. And I was like, "Oh, yeah, we're actually entering filming now for it." And he was like, "Dude, that's so awesome. I can't wait." And then I got my food and we didn't want to hold up the line. So he was just like, "I love you guys." And he likes our like Facebook page now, at Monster Productions.
And see, that brings me around to like it matters to some people that we make these films.
Which is one of those things I have to point out. Whether you get 10 views or 10 million, I was told this in film school, so this is some helpful advice. And also, Blake Lewis, a musician inspiration, said something like this to me. Whether you get the 10 views or the 10 million views, to those 10 people, it matters.
And I'm gonna quote, and actually, you're not gonna know this person. Allen Iverson is a basketball player.
Yeah. I don't know.
Okay. One of his quotes was,
Go Mariners.
he's right. Oh gosh, here we go. Listen, one of his quotes was, "There are 10 million people that hate me, but there are hundreds that like me. I'm going to take care of those hundreds and screw the 10 million people." And that's that's not what we go by. It's just a quote that makes sense to me. We're going to take care of those so odd 100 people that come back to watch our stuff.
Yeah.
We love those people. That's why we do it. Well, we do it because we love it, but we also love making those people happy with short stories and telling just our stories. I guess what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, I mean, to those people, it matters. I mean, yeah, we don't have the views that Freddie W. or one of those has, but that doesn't matter at the end of the day because there are people who do care. And how Chris got identified or I got identified, it's one of those things. People care. And how like we got that email about the people who were looking for more Sherlock content found it, and they're speculating about our stuff. They care. They want to know more. They want to see more. They love it, and it matters to them. It's now a part of them. And that's what's worth it.
So to sum it up, take care of your fan base once you get it. And now you said that at the end of the day, it doesn't matter like how many views we get. Now, would it be nice to average at like a million views or 1,000 even?
That's like saying, wouldn't it be nice to have $1 million? Of course it would be. But yes, of course, it would be wonderful.
Exactly. And I'm gonna reference my channel, this channel, GSTV Studios. When we first started, it was called The Garage Show. It was on a different channel. Me and my friend Drew at the time who started the show roughly didn't get anywhere around 100 views. Once we started doing more and more, it slowly went up. But it was mostly a show for me and my school friends. Like, basically a Wayne's World-esque type show.
It was totally a Wayne's World throwback show.
It was, more or less. And the show was about nothing. It was a show that we just decided to throw together.
Where you say what you want to say.
Exactly, the tagline. Welcome to the Garage Show, where we say what we want to say. We talked about politics, sports. Nothing was... It was like a late-night talk show almost, kind of, in a way.
It was a talk show because I was on there as an interview guest.
That was true. I'm going to link the interview right now.
Oh,
and you're going to see a young me and a young Scott.
By the way, I falsely announced a release date for our short film Demodon at the time. I was like, oh, yeah, we're going to be done. I didn't have any of the special effects scenes done, and I was just like, crap.
Exactly. And that was, I want to say, probably 2008, 2007, and the film got released
2013.
Exactly.
Yeah, Demodon was a passion project for years. When it came out, I did cry. Because of how long it took for that movie to come out and the fact that I did it. I did it is what matters.
We are aware, too, full disclosure, of how silly the film is.
Oh, it's completely ridiculous.
But at the time we were making it, we thought we were being super serious, unfortunately.
Which shows some datedness, but at the same time, you can grow to love that. Demodon, we had the fortune of not being embarrassed of it. I will still tell people all the time, like, oh, Demodon was so fun. Because it is. We had a blast doing it.
Oh, absolutely. And how about you give a little, just for those people at home, a plot teaser to Demodon?
Demodon is a movie about a down-on-his-luck news reporter who needs a big break. And he starts to investigate something very suspicious. And it turns out it's a giant monster. And so this giant monster, who's kind of like a Weapon X, it's an experiment, goes awry. And this news reporter teams up, and he may, in his prior failed interviews, have the key to saving humanity. And so it's all about overcoming those odds of being insignificant and realizing that every little thing you do is significant in some way.
So much deeper than I thought it was even till now.
Right? You're learning something new every day.
I watch the film I try to at least maybe a total of 5 times a year, just because it's a fun thing to watch. Again, we are so aware of how silly the film actually is, and a little inside tip, we're trying to bring Demodon back in a very serious way.
Maybe we are trying to bring Demodon back. I can't confirm nor deny anything, but maybe a Demodon sequel is being developed. I can't confirm nor deny anything.
Let's just say it's on the down low, maybe in the talks.
But for you guys, we'll maybe let it slide that there might be something that's being cooked up in the factory.
You heard it here first, folks. GSTV has all the breaking news when it comes to short films. Now, going back to short films, because we kind of strayed away from that. How about besides the films that you make and the films that you listed earlier that you like and drew inspiration from, what are some future projects you would like to tackle as far as either it be short films or not even short films?
Well, first off, I want to keep this Holmes series going as long as I can, not because people love it, as selfish as that sounds, but because I care so much about the Sherlock Holmes source material. Like, Chris can vouch. I irritate him all the time with just random Sherlocky crap that I slug around.
And the fun thing is, even still to this date, I don't know a damn thing about Sherlock lore.
Yeah, he doesn't, but that's always been a benefit in a weird way, is because Chris will say, so why are you doing it this way? And I'll say, oh, because of blah, 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 blah in book. And Chris goes, all right, I got it.
Just because it was in the book, I understand. And that actually, to me, it brings it as the character to Watson, because this is my take on Watson, even though I've only seen a handful of stuff Sherlock-wise with Watson, and I don't try to draw the line between me and who's the guy that plays on the TV show? What's his name?
Martin Freeman.
Yeah, Martin Freeman, who was in Civil War as a very small cameo.
Who's going to be in Black Panther?
And I cannot wait for that. But as you were saying about the future projects.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I want to keep the Holmes series going just purely because I love the source material. I love Sherlock. It's one of my favorite things ever. So I'd really like to do that. I, of course, maybe a Demo Dawn sequel here or there would be kind of nice. But in terms of like bigger projects I want to do, I would really love to get my hands on something like Doctor Who or a superhero or just something like that. I mean, a superhero I'm starting to get wary from, honestly, because I know I'm probably going to piss someone off. I'm getting fatigue from it.
We're not going to dive into that conversation right now, though.
I'm a comic book lover at heart, though, so naturally, if I had the opportunity, I would. But I would really like to make an original sci-fi again, because we did the Four Chronicles, which was kind of like a supernatural action series, and I really would love to delve more into sci-fi and try that now.
All right, well, there's your little inside.
Which, actually, I had a failed Kickstarter back in the day.
Go ahead, do tell.
I was convinced I was going to get my feature film debut off the ground with this movie called The Andromeda Project. It did not get funded, but I will have to say it is kind of like Close Encounters of the Third Kind. One day I do plan to make that movie though, despite the fact it not being funded. But I'm still bitter about that. Anyways, the Andromeda Project was kind of like more what I want to do. I want to do like a sci-fi mixed with our current world now, see where that goes, which is why things like War of the Worlds, Close Encounters of the Third Kind really resonate with me.
Speaking of War of the Worlds, I'm glad you brought that up.
Oh, Jesus.
It was only a matter of time. So we, staying on the topic of short films, we created a short. Actually, you created a short. I wasn't part of the original one at all.
You became a part of it.
I came a part. How many cuts are there of War of the Worlds for you?
There are 3 cuts. If I had my way, there would only be 2.
Now, we got Liam Neeson, and that's all I'm going to say.
We got Liam Neeson, yes, because, okay, Jeff Wayne, who does musical story kind of things, did a soundtrack for his own play done in hologram called Jeff Wayne's War of the Worlds. You can check the album out. It's fantastic.
Is that show still going around?
Yeah, it's touring for the next 50 years.
Sheesh.
Something like that. That's what they claim. But it's starring Liam Neeson. And that's one of my inspirations as a storyteller also, was this Jeff Wayne's, the original one, which had, I always forget his name, but he was in Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf. But, I mean, Chris could fact check me if he wanted. But either way, I messaged him and I said, hey, look, I did this as like a film school project back in the day. I want to maybe reshoot it and re-edit it to do it more in inspiration of Jeff Wayne's War of the Worlds because of how much I love it. And they came back, said, by all means, use it. We love the idea that you're going to use it. And I couldn't believe I even got back with them because they're a major record label in UK. And they said, by all means, use it. And I said, I'm not going to get sued. And they're like, no, by all means, just, we love it. The only thing they didn't want is footage from the play, but the only thing we did get, which was in the intro, and it was Liam Neeson. And I was like, we got Liam freaking Neeson.
So how was it the moment you saw the title credits roll and it said starring Liam Neeson?
I felt so cool because Liam Neeson, of how much he is just a hero to me, that Liam Neeson just in something I edited. I don't care that I didn't direct him in that case because it was a pre-used video clip. At that point, I was like, I have Liam Neeson involved in my project in one way or another. I felt so cool. And that's just one of those things. It was just unreal to me because it felt so much bigger than it really was. Because in all reality, it was Chris and a couple buddies of mine running around downtown and shooting stuff in costume. And then it turns out that we just got to make it so much bigger than it really was.
An awesome time for an awesome movie. Go check it out. World of Worlds, Jeff Wayne edition on Monster Productions 27. Hey, if you're interested in any of our videos, please go look up Monster Productions 27 on YouTube. That's Monster Productions, one word with 27 at the end. Yes, the name is changing. We're not going to tell you what the name is. First video you should go check out that I personally reference is Holmes University 1. Now, Holmes University 1 is set in college where Holmes and Watson meet for the first time. What if situation? They get into dire situations, they have to get out of the situation. I'm saying situation a lot. Situation, situation, situation. And watch the series all the way up to 3. We finished wrapping up the 4th one. The next movie I suggest watching is actually The 4 Chronicles. And you could probably start from Fighting 4, but Scott would probably recommend that you start from 4 minutes. Then goes to Found 4, Fighting 4, and then Final 4. Final movie I would recommend is the Bro Code series. What happens when bros don't see a ways and they have to have guns and they're terrible shots? Find out in the Bro Code series. Never break the code. Let's get back to Scott and see what he has to say. We're going to ask him more questions about what it takes to be a short filmmaker and how you should go about doing it. And some fun stories along the way too. Enjoy. Welcome back after that fake commercial break. Now, going back into the short films, I wanted to bring this up because you brought up World of Worlds. It reminded me of that time that we got stopped by a cop because of the guns we were carrying. Now, making short films, always, always please let your surroundings know that you are making a film. Don't be an idiot, and like we are, and just decide to go out there with airsoft guns. We don't use real guns. Please don't use real guns. I cannot stress enough. Do not bring a real gun to a set, no matter what.
I'm a lover of firearms. I'm a lover of just the appreciation of the art of a firearm, but never bring a real gun to a set. I won't name his name, we had an actor who wanted to bring real guns to the set. And this was actually recently. One of the most recent projects we did, it was Holmes, actually, for our next Holmes movie. And he wanted to bring real guns to the set. And I said, no. And if you do, you're not on this movie. Lo and behold, he kept saying he was going to do it. So we never called him back. And I can't stress that enough because of the fact that you're not a professional shoot and you're not shutting down I-90. You're not shutting down a freeway or a building.
We don't have permits. We don't have agreements from the city. We don't let. Well, we probably should let the cops know anytime.
You can and you can't. I don't want to get political on this, but the state we live in, there is a film tax and an art tax. And the film tax to shoot and get the permits is a 25% cut of whatever that day is. I'm sure there's some guy who just got offended by that who wants to comment. But I will say that it is, for a ham sandwich budget short film, it is brutal on you to get a film tax like that, where you say, hey, I want to film on this day at this time. And it's like, oh, congratulations. That shoot that was going to cost you $7 now is going to cost you $30.
So sum it up. Be smart. Don't be dumb. Let your surroundings know as far as if you're going to shoot in a neighborhood, or don't shoot in a very populated area. And if you do, again, just let your surroundings know. Carry a sign with you saying we are filming.
And always support local chains because they're more likely to work with you on a private level. We've gotten some higher production value stuff than we've ever gotten by just contacting people who are privately owned and saying, hey, can we please use your facilities and credit you? And they're usually more than willing to work with you.
Absolutely. You're not going to know until you ask. And don't be afraid to ask, because we were afraid to ask for the longest time. Years even, until very recently. We just assumed, like, why would they do that? That they could really care less. Like, they're not going to let us bring fake guns into this place and do the kind of stuff. Always ask. The worst they can say is no and go to hell.
We are shooting, well, we wrapped shooting on Holmes University 4, and I remember me telling Chris, saying, hey, I want to do this finale, and I won't spoil anything about the finale, but I want it to be in a movie theater because I like the idea of the thematics of it all. And Chris was like, there's no way we're going to get this in the theater.
I flat out said that is never going to happen, dude.
Because of the theater shootings and all this kind of stuff, because there were going to be guns on set and that kind of stuff. Fake guns, of course. And I said, okay, it'll probably not happen, but let's try. I went out, emailed a local chain theater, which there are not many of those left. By all means, support local chain theaters for the love of God. And they said, absolutely. Why, whenever you're ready, let's make the time, let's make the arrangements, and let's cut a deal.
And we made them wait quite a bit, actually, unfortunately.
We made them, due to scheduling complications, because again, with short films and scheduling actors and everything, we made them wait about 4 months. And we said, I'm sorry, like, it took this long, but we had no other option. And they said, oh, no problem. When do you need it? And we booked it that day. And we said, okay. And I want to say it was about 3 weeks from that point. We scheduled it, got up the next morning, and shot there. They were wonderful. Some of the best people we've worked with.
Absolutely.
And they just wanted to watch us do it. And because they're lovers of the film world too, because they're locally owned. They're not just some corporate chain that's there to make a buck. And it was amazing. They gave us a tour of the theater and they welcomed us in with open arms. And I can't give them enough credit, which is why I have to say ask. Never be afraid to ask. If you think that you can't up your production quality because of the fact you're like, there's no way they'll say yes, find out.
Indeed. And I want to go back. You said scheduling conflicts is always an issue with short films.
That's an understatement.
Understatement of the year, if that may be. Maybe of a lifetime, actually. Again, we don't get paid to do this. We do this because we love to. Would we like to get paid doing this? Absolutely. It'll probably draw some inspiration as money signs are going through my minds right now.
Oh, yeah, that's always nice. Money's always nice.
Money is always nice. But as for the people who are starting out to make short films, I want to ask you this question, Scott. Is it a good idea to cast your friends later on once you get started and established, or is it better to not necessarily hire, but find people that aren't necessarily your closest friends? Because sometimes friends, and you know this, can have input, and sometimes the wrong input on how the film works and how it wants to go. Because you're their friend, they'll think you'll listen. Go ahead and answer that question.
A lot of people are afraid to cast their friends, and I say don't be afraid. Perfect Proof, Sam Raimi, and Bruce Campbell are the best of friends. They were the best of friends before they did movies. They worked together. Bruce Campbell, as much as I love him, he's not the best actor, but he's become a novelty of sorts and a cherished treasure. And that's one thing I have to say, is don't be afraid to cast your friends. And yes, they do sometimes have influence on your work because they are your friends. But also these actors that you bring in that you don't necessarily know as well can become your great friends too. And they become friends at the same pace that your friends would. They're all people. They're not different because you're working with them. And I've always brought in people from all walks of life. Whether it be, Chris half the time doesn't know some of the people that are on set, and then we're all friends by the end of it because everyone just is happy to be there. And even if they're not fully happy to be there, they end up enjoying themselves. And everyone just it becomes a communal effort of sorts.
And even if you cast your friends, and sometimes they give you a hard time, which we've all done, unfortunately.
Yeah.
I've been admittedly done that. Don't be afraid to pull the dad card, I'll say, and direct. Like, you are the director for people who are actually directing short films. Don't be afraid to pull authority.
Chris hates it when I do that. I'm just going to say it. Chris hates it when I do that.
I hate it, but I respect it. That's the difference.
Chris will whine up a storm about it, but I will be like, Chris, it's happening, and I don't want this to happen ever. And I'm just like, it's happening.
Well, we'll talk about that later. Sometimes we butt heads a lot. Actually, a lot we do butt heads. But a lot of times too, like I'll be on set with everyone else goofing off, and I'll help Scott try to get the stuff done.
Chris is a great assistant director in that sense that he will rein people in when I look at him and I'm like, Chris, this isn't going to get done if we don't do something, and then Chris will start to crack the whip too, and it really helps.
By no means am I a director. I probably never will be a director, but
Well, we have talked about you directing an installment.
Okay.
To something.
Experimental is the word. Again, you heard it here first, folks. But listen, I see myself more as a producer. I fund the project. I'm in the project. I sometimes, what's the word? Guide the project.
Of sorts.
Of sorts.
Although, well, I'm sure. I'm sorry if all of a sudden it peaked in the audio. I accidentally punched the mic stand. Chris might be in the near future directing a spin-off film in the world of our Holmes University series to see what he can kind of do on his own. I welcome it. I would be there as like a producing support, but Chris would be the one that's actually calling the shots.
I want to see if directing is my forte or not. I think I see Scott do enough that I feel like I could do it. And technically, I've directed before. There's a scene in the first Holmes University where I don't know if it's technically directing, but I held the camera and
you directed it.
I directed it, and not just that, but I direct my own stuff on my own channel too, and because it's a one-man show really, but. It's a fun thing to do sometimes because you have imagination, and if you can bend people's wills to your will, basically, as a director should, you can make something special.
And Chris did work on a project that still has never seen the light of day.
No. We're not going to get into that. For those of you at home, you're never going to know this. This stays with me and Scott till the end, until I am drunk enough to actually tell you guys. Until I tell them, it doesn't leave this room.
Uh-huh.
Yes.
Yep. Call Kevin Smith and tell him he wants his movie back.
Yeah, we'll see. Moving on. Okay, so we kind of delve into short films a lot and what it takes to make them. Now, let's say somebody gets noticed as a short filmmaker on YouTube or anywhere else. They get called up to make a feature-length film, like Hollywood status.
Yeah.
Do they abandon what they've done on YouTube because they're making full-time movies?
Oh no, not at all. A lot of people who go up the scale, per se, the best example this year even is Dan Trachtenberg. He did a little short film that many of you might know called Portal Still Alive, and he went on to do 10 Cloverfield Lane. Which is the sort of sequel to one of my favorite films of all time, if not my favorite film.
We've heard that.
Yeah, that's no secret. And Dan Trachtenberg has always adhered to his roots, and even after 10 Cloverfield Lane happened, he's working on an episode of a TV show now for, I believe it's called Dark Mirror, where it's kind of like a Twilight Zone kind of show. And he still, to this day, talks about short films that he's writing and producing. Neil Blomkamp posts all the time about creative works that he just has in his head. It's something that keeps going. I mean, you're going to find a way to give your creative work to the world.
Go ahead and burp. Looks like you need to burp.
I did.
Okay. Now, let's say about you. Let's say you get called up to the big leagues. You take then Monster Productions. I'm not naming the new production yet. Monster Productions 27, or just Monster Productions as I punch the mic in the vagina.
That's always hot.
That's always hot. Let's say you get to make the next whatever Marvel movie. Just an example. I'm not saying that you want to do that, but example, you make money off it, and
I'd make the hell out of a Moon Knight movie.
You heard it here first, folks. Hollywood, if you're listening, this guy wants to make. Yeah.
That's going to be a TV show now, so
it
won't do any good.
Well, let's say maybe you can do an episode. We'll see. Anyways, because directors do that all the time. They get to just do episodes here and there and then move on to the next thing. But anyways, let's say you make a movie, you maybe do a few TV episodes here and there. Your schedule is just swamped.
Hmm.
Do you have time to attend to YouTube and make a short film?
At that point, your day job is gone because of that's a cozy thing that they take good care of you. Uh, and yes, you would have time because they're the best example I can give. Joss Whedon, right after doing a little movie that you might have heard of called The Avengers, he did with his friends at his house for like a weekend, Much Ado About Nothing, because he really wanted to do it. And the only reason he released it to the public is because Joss Whedon is Joss Whedon, and they're like, oh my god, anything Joss Whedon touches is now gold. So he decided with his buddies that was just a personal venture. That doesn't go away. No one tells you you're not allowed to, and that's one of those things that most directors adhere to. I mean, if you're talking like hardcore studio establishment, they're grinding out a movie every day. So it's one of those things that, yeah, absolutely, you stay the same, business as usual.
And we're not going to lie, it's probably could be one of the hardest things to make a short film and then be noticed and then just go straight into making feature-length movies. It's not going to happen within like a year.
Oh, it
If
takes
you,
years.
if you look at guys like Corridor Digital, who are just now, after so many years being on YouTube, now breaking into feature-length like film, being backed by studios and all that kind of stuff. It took them almost 10 years to do that. And they've put out high-quality stuff, high-quality storytelling stuff. More or less towards the beginning and towards the recent stuff, because now they're kind of turned into Freddie W 2.0 in a way,
They're just Freddie W on another channel.
basically. But they're doing feature length stuff now, being backed by studios. If you want to go look at the project, I'm sure you can look it up online. But for those of you who don't know, Corridor Digital came around.
Talking about Prism.
Is that what it is? I
think it's
actually
called Prism.
is it called Prism? Okay, it's based on a video game. I know that much.
Oh, then it's not. They had their own original work called Prism.
Okay, well, there's that too. I actually do remember hearing something about that. But again, it takes some time.
It does.
And now, how many years have we been on YouTube, Scott?
We've been on YouTube since I want to say about 2009, releasing trailers for Demodon. But if you want to talk about actual releases, it would be 2010.
So we've been on the tubes for YouTube's about 6 years.
Yep.
We are now just making a business out of it.
Yeah, which is why the name Monster Productions will probably be changing in the very near future.
Unfortunately. So another pro tip with Chris, if you want to be serious about making short films, make sure you choose a name that has not been taken yet. So unfortunately, Monster Productions has been taken.
It's been taken by a landscaping company. But I will say the reason why we picked Monster Productions, not only because monster movies were a huge inspiration, but it was picked out of everyone. I hate it. It's one of my biggest pet peeves. And it happened in film school all the time. When you say there's a project you want to do, and the teacher or whoever is the official says, no, you can't. That's one of those things you have to do with a budget, with this, blah, blah, blah. I hated that.
You sound very bitter about that.
I'm very bitter about that because every project I did in film school that got me through film school was because the teacher told me I couldn't do it.
And that's the other thing, too, that I want to bring up. We kind of said don't go to film school. If you want to, get the extra experience, whether it be editing or whether it be audio stuff, whether it be just whatever, learning more about the business of itself and getting a job in that business, by all means, go to film school. But most of our earlier work was stuff for Scott's film school.
There was a period of time that we jokingly and affectionately call the Golden Age. It wasn't our best work, but we were producing stuff like the Golden Age of Hollywood, where we were shooting every week, it seemed like. And we had some great stuff, and we had some really horrible stuff. But we still made it. And yeah, film school, if you want, as much as I say don't really go to film school, if you want to refine your craft or you want to get an education in terms of getting a degree, by all means do it.
And with short films, it takes time to obviously squeeze them out. Now, I don't want to substitute the word quality with quantity, but it takes time to get the kind of quality we're squeezing out now rather than we did then. it's probably a good thing, and you can tell me this because I'm terrible with it. Consistency with because obviously my channel is way different than your channel. Mine's both of them are about entertainment, but mine's a different type of entertainment. Mine's low key, very kind of reviewy based kind of stuff. And you have a review channel if you want to plug that real quick.
I do movie reviews and TV show reviews/discussions at MP27 Reviews on YouTube.
And once in a blue moon, I join him on that, whether that may be like the 5 times every like 8 months. But it's just if take your time. Don't be too pressured because Scott can tell you I pressure him to get stuff out left and right because I feel like we need to build. We're still building our fan base. I feel like we can only do that with more videos, which is why I suggested to him, and if you do this too, take time to write out some big projects for your short films, but at the same time, try to squeeze something in between those 2 big projects.
That can get really hard to do, and that's where he and I differ, is that can be really hard to do. Don't let it distract you from your actual final goal. If you want to do like little video projects in between, no one's stopping you. But I will promise you that if you want to do something in between, do it. And it might get convoluted amongst your other video clips, but let it happen, and it's fun in the end.
That sounds like a good time to wrap things up. Actually, I'm going to hit me with the quick questions. Like, we're going to spend no more than 30 seconds on these.
Like a rapid fire.
Rapid fire. Okay, Scott, get close to the mic.
Oh, yeah, I'm always close to the mic.
What is your favorite short film you've done to date?
Holmes University 2, Longest Winter.
There we go. I was part of that one. Go check it out. Holmes University 2 on Monster Productions 27 YouTube channel. Plug.
Yeah.
Whoop. I already asked that question. Never mind. What are you working on now?
We are wrapping up shooting, and we wrapped up shooting for Holmes University 4 Origins of the Fall. We are currently developing possible spin-offs for the Holmes University universe, and just maybe some other smaller projects on the side.
Share your favorite memory of filming. It can be any memory from any point in time.
More recently, we rented out a movie theater for Holmes University 4. Of course, I'm biased on that one, but if we're going all-time memory, the entire production process for Demodon, or just getting everyone together and trying to make something.
In closing, Scott, your thoughts on the short film industry in general, and how people who are listening to this should go about starting their plans.
I think it's caught between a rock and a hard place, that there is that huge industry that people want to see more stories for stuff they're not used to, but at the same time, they don't know how to find it. So you have to find a way to find them, and that's really the difficult span that it takes, is finding that range that people want to find you in. Other than that, it's just challenging in general to get everything made, get everything to the quality, because fans can also be the most nitpicky people on the planet. So you have to be real careful. Never let your guard down.
Everybody is indeed a critic. Don't let it discourage you.
A lot of times you have to ignore what they have to say because they're not fully paying attention. They just want to either tear you down, or they're just mad. So a lot of times you just got to ignore it and just move on.
Indeed. I want to thank Scott for being here today on this podcast, GSTalks, as I'm trying to tag it because that's what I do. I'm a producer. I have to come up with these things. Scott, again, thank you.
Oh, yeah.
He's off to probably go get a few Z's before he has to go to work tomorrow.
Oh, yeah. I have a production meeting at 9:50 in the morning. I never really talked about it. When I'm not doing the creative short films, I'm also working on search and rescue training videos and doing some search and rescue stuff in general, like a documentary. Yeah, it's a lot of fun. But I have a production meeting in a couple hours, actually, about that.
So this has been an awesome podcast of GS Talks. We're gonna wrap things up now, and I think, yeah, I'm gonna plug everything on on the description box below. So if you're interested in any of our stuff, whether it be my channel, which obviously you are because you clicked on this link, or Scott's 2 channels, MP27 Reviews, or Monster Productions 27, which will be changing its name sooner or later here within the next probably month or two.
Mm-hmm.
Do you want to give the name?
I don't want to drop the name right now in case any legal issues happen. But
There we go. It's a real business, folks. And let me just say, once you find out what the name is and you go back to this part, it means a lot to us, the name. So
the name is kind of a symbolic thing. It started as an inside joke, but it's actually a symbolic thing. It took a long time to come to an agreement on the name. It was a hard parting of the ways.
harder for him. I begged him to change the name for the beginning.
Yeah, let's be real. You begged me. But for me, anyway, it was a hard parting because of how much it's in the past.
I hear you, man. All right. Well, again, thank you guys for listening, for lasting well over an hour. I didn't expect to actually go this long, but it's kind of nice, and I hope you guys enjoyed it. We're going to be squeezing these podcasts probably either once or twice a week. I don't have set days yet. And as far as GSTV goes, yes, the SNES, top 5 SNES games are coming out. It's been in production for about a year now.
Let's be real. This thing has been developed since probably 2009.
Ha ha ha. It was still at the Garage Show back in 2009. But I promise you, it's coming out. I am going to work on it. You guys don't understand. I don't know. I don't want to get into it. But it will come out. Thank you for joining us on a discussion on short films. Go check out Scott. Subscribe to him. Subscribe to me. And come back for more. Thank you. And good night.